This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
You guys, this is going to be an amazing episode. I'm so excited about this one for a bunch of different reasons. You guys know I started my career in sales, like back when I was peddling candy for the baseball team and then car sales. I actually have a true professional of the sales craft, but more importantly, a really good human, because it's always hard to get to know these guys on social media or on different conferences and events. But I got to spend some time with our next guest, kind of like when there was no cameras rolling, when there was nothing happening. And I found that there's like a lot more of a human behind just like overcoming objections and asking the right questions through the sales process. So this next guest, he's got an amazing career. I want to hear all about it, but I really want to get to know him as the person. It's my friend Chuck Thokey. Welcome to the show, Mr. Thokey.
Thanks so much, Benny, man. It is a pleasure being with you.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, I already introduced you as the sales guru, so enough about that. So tell me about Chuck. Like, where are you born originally? Where are you from? How'd you grow up? Tell me about the Chuck from like 0 to 18.
Man, I tell you, the first 16 years of my life, I never left Ohio. I mean, I was born and raised here in Ohio. For the most part, Dayton, Ohio.
Dude, you're a flyer.
I am a flyer.
I'm from Canton, Ohio. I don't know if you knew that. Did you remember I'm from Canton, Ohio?
I was born in Canton, Ohio. Yeah,
you
Streetsboro. Yeah.
Oh, Streetsboro.
Streetsboro, and all my family's from North Canton.
Oh, North Canton. Yeah, my mom lives in North Canton. Yeah, my sister lives in North. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all over Ohio is kind of my thing, but very few people know that I actually tried to act and model when I was younger.
We got good skin, man. I mean, you do. I mean, like, I don't know how old you are. I know you're older than me, just because I see, huh?
45, man.
Yeah, I mean, but like you look like you're 35.
Oh man, thank you. My wife would not say that.
Really? Well, we got to get her on the podcast next. If she likes this episode, we're gonna get the missus on to see the real.
Oh, she'd love to. Yes.
So that's what I mean. You got to be honest. You got to be open and honest, man, because we're gonna send this to the wife, and she knows you inside and out. So, what was like? What'd your parents do for a living? How many brothers and sisters? Give us a little bit about like what it was like growing up in Dayton.
Yeah, so I've got two sisters. One of them is a dentist, and the other one lives here in Ohio. She works at a place called Green Toka, and then my brother is kind of a free-spirited guy. Followed the Grateful Dead around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he would sell spaghetti at Grateful Dead to make a living, and he'd also go and pack those trucks, the big yellow, the semi trucks. He would go pack those just for food and just money to move around and follow the Grateful Dead around. So love my brother. But,
are you the oldest, the youngest, the middle?
I'm the youngest.
Okay, yeah. So you're the baby.
Yeah, my parents are in their 80s. So yeah.
Wow. What did your dad do for a living?
So he owned his own business. He was a photographer. He was one of the top photographers in Ohio. So, like, did he do the kind of photography, like, for schools and stuff? Like, back, like, the old school photography where they'd set up, like, at the schools and they'd come in and, like, because back in the old days, like, it wasn't like it is now. Pictures and the prom pictures, and he would even do the sports, and I would sit in the what do you call it, the dark room, and I would develop all the pictures.
That's a cool thing. I remember I took a photography class in high school, man, where there was a dark room and we got to hang the stuff up and you don't have to watch it. We learned all about like old cameras. And I mean, it's an interesting, kids nowadays, they have no concept of like old cameras, photography. Like they whip out the iPhone and then it's like, oh yeah, instant. Your dad probably gets sick to his stomach. He's like, that's not photography.
It's funny to listen to him because he's like, well, everybody's a photographer these days.
Yeah, we got out at the right time. Now they made it a commodity, right? Like,
that's right. That's right. He's 80 some years old and still takes his camera out, starts snapping pictures, and it's fun to watch. Did he have was he kind of like a one-man band, or did he have like a couple helpers, or like? It was me and my sister that would help. And
so it wasn't like some developed business like the businesses that me and you work in today. Like it was more like the old school kind of like where like it's just all family, right? Like.
He would get so mad at me. I'd go to these proms with him, and I'd have to hold the light so that when the flash hit, well, these hot chicks were walking around the prom, and I'm going like this, and he's like, "Would you just point the light this way?"
Yeah, you can't even do your job. Yeah, you're like a shiny object. Well, I see you doing a lot now. Like, I can see you developing your personal brand a little bit, and I watch you on camera, and I know that you're getting into it a little. It probably takes you back to those days with your dad and like hanging out, and because you didn't even know what you didn't know, right? And now look, and me, I was in the I grew up in the, I'm a little younger than you, but like, VHS tapes. I would edit tapes like on VHS and at my church, like, on like 1-inch reels. And I was more into the video side than the photography side. Mm-hmm. But I just remember doing all that on the old school equipment. Now these kids use Adobe and they got all this digital stuff and Photoshop. And it's like, man, I don't even want to learn how to do it. So I just pay them to do it.
You don't even have to be good anymore. You just have to know how to edit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now they have apps too that like do half of it for you. So, yeah. But so what was it like growing up with a dad who's like self-employed? Like how did he get all of his jobs? Was it just reputation one at a time, like the old-fashioned way? Was he like a great salesman or like? He
was not a good salesman, man. He there was a time where things got a little tight, so he went on the road to sell picture frames. And I got my first lesson in sales. We went up towards Canton. It was in Canton or Akron. And we went into this guy's photography shop. And this guy took me under his wing. He says, I'm going to give you a sales lesson right now. He says, no matter who walks in my shop, they're going to buy something if it's not the tie off my neck. And I always remembered that ever since I walked in that guy's place. And I do the same thing today. I still preach that, 30, 40 years later. So.
That's awesome.
And then,
awesome. Yeah, because you remembered that, right? Like you remember that. And you're like, I want to, that, Dad. You need to be more like that guy.
Yeah.
I want a new car. I want you to buy me a new car. I want you to buy me a new car. I want you to buy me this. Like, Dad, you got to go out and hustle more.
My dad was he was an entrepreneur. He was a businessman, but he'd always complain that everybody always wanted the guy from out of town. He could never get the people in the town he was in. It's always the people from out of town, and then those folks went out of town to get there. It was crazy to listen to him sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, who wants to drive 3 hours to Canton or Akron to get work, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
What'd your mom do? Did your mom stay at home, or did your mom did she work?
She was an executive at NCR. National Cash Register.
So you had two parents that were kind of kicking butt, man. Like that's pretty. You got a good start at life then. I would
definitely
say,
had some role models. That's for sure.
That's awesome, man.
My dad was never home, just like I'm never home, and then my mom was a hard worker. Same here.
So what was struggle for what was it like for Chuck? What Chuck think a struggle was back when he was a kid? What was a tough time for Chuck when he was a kid?
Oh man, a lot of my youth was a struggle, not because of money or anything. It was because of school. I was in learning disabled classes all the way through school. I was actually labeled EMR,
Tell me what that is.
EMR stands for educably mentally retarded. Today,
really?
Today they call it ADHD.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I mean. So I'm just a few years younger than you, right? Like you're 45, yeah. I'm 41. I was born in 81. I was diagnosed with ADHD in 1988 or 89. So I think that was one of the that's when it started maybe they made the shift or something.
Right.
My mom decided never to put me on the drugs, which, I look back and think I'm glad I didn't do that. I would have probably made it through school a little bit easier, but I would have never turned out to, but I, it took 40 years to figure this out. Like it was a good thing. It was a big, hard road of struggle. So me and you have that in common. So what was that like? What was it like for the teachers? What was it like for the parents? What was it like for the other kids? Talk a little bit about that. Cause I've talked about that on a couple of my podcasts.
It was, it was tough until I got the opportunity to go to the JVS. Now, I was always told.
What's that? Tell me what these
Joint Vocational School. That's where you go.
That's where they hide kids, right? They don't know what to do with, right?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned it because that's exactly what we were always told. So when we went, I'm like, you know what? It's a free day. There's no way I'm going because that's what I've always heard. Until we went through this, we went through the new program, which is the engineering program. And when we were going through it, they even looked at me and said, Chuck, this isn't for you. Don't worry about it, man. We're just going to walk through here. And that's the one that I got excited about. And when we got back, I says, that's the one I want. And they're like, you did hear that the guy said this is for gifted kids. And I says, I don't care. You guys I've failed everything else. If I fail that test, it's just one more test that I fail. And I actually passed the test. I barely, but I passed it with a very thin margin and went into it. And I mean, I still, I graduated in the half that made the top half possible, but I got through it.
That's a good way of saying it, man. Well, see, we can look back and laugh about it now, but I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure, like, inside, like, if you're anything like me, you're like, man, why can I not, like, why do I feel like a disappointment at school? Why do I feel like a disappointment to my parents? Your brother, your sisters were probably like, I don't know, like the chosen children, right? Like, if it was, like, I had two sisters, like, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. It was, the struggle's real, man. Like, when you're going through it, and nowadays, the school systems are so much better. Like, the teachers, like, know how to deal with this so much better than they did back then. Because in the 80s, man, the teachers were not equipped. Just like the parents weren't equipped to deal with kids like us.
Yeah.
And I know this, I hope you don't mind me sharing this with the audience. You're more introverted, I'm more extroverted.
That's true.
Right. And so, like, with introverts, you probably keep a lot more stuff inside. So the struggle's inside more. Me, I was like, like I would I would try to get everybody to like me. And then I would like push too hard. The gas and the brake pedal, like the gas was always on. The brakes didn't know how to work. Like it was really clunky, really, for almost 40 years. So,
and I was the guy in the corner that wouldn't talk.
Right, which is like the one that they're worried about, right? You're the one that they're worried about shooting up the schools and stuff like that, right? Like, yeah.
Look at this
not to make a joke about that, but like, I mean, like the quiet ones are the scary ones, like especially the ones that like aren't considered smart, right? Like, even though I know you, like, because I've got to know you over the last couple of years, you're smart on the things you want to be smart about. Like when you're interested in something, like your IQ goes all the way up.
And it's even as often as I'll talk in the high schools and colleges, I mention this because what people hear next is that I was one of the youngest aerospace engineers in the country at age 19. So wait,
hold on a second. We didn't get to that part yet. That's a bombshell. Yeah. And I was an aerospace. You're up there with like did you get the Wilbur and Orville Wright scholarship or something for that, or like what? Like I was at the Air and Space Museum. I learned a lot about Orville and Wilbur from Dayton, Ohio. So
yeah, so I when I went through that program, it was a electronic engineering program. So then from there, I was supposed to go into college, and I went in for like probably half a quarter. Until I realized that college just wasn't for me.
You made half a quarter. What is that? 6 weeks? 8 weeks?
That was about 6 weeks, and all I could think about was
4 weeks longer than me, man. I went to Kent Reed, Kent Wright, Kent State for like 2 weeks.
I actually met my current wife at. I feel that I was supposed to go to college for that 6 weeks just to meet her. Now she was going out with a good friend of mine, so I didn't date her then. I didn't date her for, 5-6 years after that. And
that was before the social media, but at least you made contact. You knew who she was.
Yeah.
So that's good. So, like, what was that transition like? Being the youngest, like, and I think you said one of your sisters is a dentist, and like she obviously probably went to college, right? Like, she's probably like, and she's, is she the one that like everybody's like, oh wow, you gotta like at least, you gotta at least be as good as her. If you're not, you're a failure, right? Like,
she's the darling of the family, that's for sure. Everybody loves Kathy.
Yeah, well, everybody loves Chuck and his ability to be able to influence now. So I think that you're catching up, right? Like you're catching up. It just took a while, right?
It did take a bit. But yeah, so I went out and got into contracting in aerospace. I started out stringing wires through aircraft, and then once I started moving around the United States, long story short, I got into where I even asked, I said, hey, I want to go in, I want to start testing the aircraft. And so they let me, they moved me into that department, and I was fixing the aircraft faster than anybody else. And then, because I would write everything down. I still to this day, I had to go to what we call a remarkable, because I can't, my wife will not let me get another notebook.
Me, like as much as like everybody thinks I'm like Mr. Technology and I like all that stuff, like I'm still kind of old school, man. Don't tell anybody. I still like to write on the paper.
But so I would write everything down. So I would write the problem down, and when I fixed it, I'd write it down. So what I realized with the people that were building the aircraft, they're making the same mistakes because it's the same people building it. So it would come back around to us. And so when I figured that out, I went to my manager and I says, "Hey, I want the next 3 aircraft, and I want to be able to choose my people, and we're gonna go at these aircraft." And they said, "Well, yeah, go ahead, get your people. You figure out who you want on your team, and you can have the next 3 aircraft." Well, we got these things out. So it usually takes 3 months for an aircraft to go from the back of the hangar to the front of the hangar to go to flight. And we got 3 of them out in 3 weeks. And so the following week, after we got those out, Jim Ziegler, the president of Learjet at the time, he comes over, he taps me on the shoulder. I've only seen him in magazines. I've never actually seen the guy in person. He taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Are you Chuck Thokey?" And I'm like, "Man, they really bring the big guns when they're going to let you go." And so he let me know. He said, "You just saved the company $30-some million." And I was like, "Can I have half of that?"
Dude, take 1%, bro. Don't go for half. Like you young kid. You look at you young kid trying to go for 50%, man. Like the old man you now is like 1%. I'll take 1%. So you're a problem solver. So you realize that at a young age, probably that you probably didn't even realize it until that guy was like, "You just solved a $30 million problem."
So he helped me get into the engineering department, which the FAA was not going to have. And so they gave me some crazy college schedule that it was all like the PhD level classes that I had to take. And so it was crazy, but ultimately we got them done. And you'll see me walk around. I got the engineering ring on my finger because it was harder for me. A lot of the guys that I worked with are all out of MIT, and here I am, like, 6 weeks of Sinclair.
Yeah, and like that guy was probably like, "Hey, listen, whatever we gotta do to get Chuck to pass these tests, so that way we can get him solving problems again." Because back then they weren't creative enough to realize, like, dude, like he could just be a consultant. He don't have to have the degree. Like he just needs to it was so backwards back then, man. Like, and you know what? It made guys like me and you feel like we weren't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're like the black sheep. Like, and then did that lead to any tell me about like what happens when you go home, like back in those days, like how did you feel? Like tell me about how you felt and like tell me like what that did to you as a man.
I grew up fast. So the girl that I was dating, which is my ex-wife now, but everybody I worked with was in their 30s and everybody's married. So I thought, hey, it's time to just go ahead and get married. And I was only 21 when I got married the first time, which I even tell my kids right now, I says, wait until at least you're like 25 or 28.
Girls can go younger, guys need to be older.
I was always in a plane somewhere, and they said we had AIDS, airborne induced divorce syndrome, and it's true.
Oh, jeez. Oh man, I think I'm starting to realize where the top rep comes from. Yeah. Like the flight school,
dude,
and
the
flight, and like the whole like. I'm assuming that was all you coming up with that, yeah. Especially not from Dayton. I mean, like knowing, like me taking Sammy to Washington D.C. and learning all about like my 9-year-old knows more about Wilbur and Orville Wright, like from like the YouTube and all the stuff, all the info stuff that they show in these things. So it had to be a great place to grow up as a kid in that and like liking that, right? Like that had to like.
It was good. I still love it here, man. I came back after living all over the United States and Canada. When we built the Continental jet, I lived in Canada for 6 months while we built that, and I still came back to the States and came right back to Dayton, Ohio.
So as you're going through this and you're struggling to kind of like just keep passing tests and trying to like do what they say you got to do, follow all the rules, right? Like, and then you're also trying to get married because you think it's the right thing to do. How did that, where did you ever feel conflict? Like, where like just something just didn't seem like I wasn't like living in my like best like space. Well, I felt like that a lot. So
when I really felt uncomfortable is when 9/11 happened and we all kind of got laid off. I was on the cover of a lot of the aerospace magazines, so I was kind of passed around through a lot of the aerospace companies. So I went from Learjet to Raytheon to Airbus, but finally my wife at the time says, we just need to go back to Ohio. This is crazy. We need to go back. And at that point, I went from making amazing income to I lived where nobody should have to live, and
can you give me an idea like what an amazing income looks like back in like 2001?
So back then, I was making just a little bit over maybe 110,000.
That's good money back in 2001. That's like great. Yeah, you're in the top, man. Like that's good money.
Especially being that young and
yeah.
We didn't have what all the young kids have today. I mean, you would still have to work your way up. Today, right. You can be a millionaire coming out of high school, it seems like. But when I came back, I was still trying to find a job. I literally had to work third shift in a meat packing plant. I had to lie to get the job because if I had said that I was an engineer, they would never have given me the job. And so what I did, because I was applying for jobs all over the place, everybody kept telling me, "Oh, you're overqualified. You're overqualified." So finally, I just put janitor on the application and got a job running a forklift around picking up meat. And this is where things get fun. I kind of kept to myself, again, introvert. I kind of kept to myself. And for whatever reason, the plant manager kind of took to me. So and this was all third shift. So he was working third shift too. And he would come in and see me in the break room. He'd come down and sit next to me. He's got a suit on and I've got an Eskimo suit on because it's in a freezer. And he would sit there and talk. And I looked over and I says, "You don't look very happy. What's going on?" And he says, "Man, they got this thing called Six Sigma." He says, "I just can't seem to figure this thing out. I lied to get in there. And I've got a black belt in Six Sigma." And I'm sitting there like, "What's that?" And finally, after about a week of watching him kick his can, I says, "Look, I got to share with you." I says, "I know Six Sigma, and I know it because," and I went through, let him know I have a black belt in Six Sigma. I know lean manufacturing very well. And I was fired the next day.
So here, take me back a second. Why did you? Was it you and the wife that just didn't like traveling anymore? Is that why you got out of like that, or why did you get out of that? Like, why did you have to go back to Dayton?
She was very close to her parents.
Okay, so it was more of a family thing.
She didn't really like being there anyway.
And there was no jobs in Dayton for you in the aerospace world?
Unless I wanted to go and work at behind a desk, which I don't do very well behind a desk.
Yeah, I could tell. Me neither.
So I'm not that type of engineer. I mean, I've got to be out on the floor. I've got to keep doing something.
All right, so that makes sense. I just wanted to make because I lost that for a second. All right, so then you gotta go get a job. As soon as you tell them the truth, you get fired, which is crazy.
I literally, we sat there. I spent the last part of my day or my shift teaching him Six Sigma. I mean, going from the start all the way through to where he could go in and pass this test that he needs to take, and then he lets me go the next day. And I came in. I says, "This is the best thing that could ever happen to me." Because if you don't fire me, then because I am if you ask me, says, "Chuck, what is your biggest downfall?" It's how loyal I am. I would still be there today if you wouldn't have let me go.
Hey, listen, I say that to just about. I mean, I've been fired from every job I ever had. There's not a job that I ever quit. I've been fired from every job I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what? I did go work at Sugardale. Do you know Sugardale, the hot dog company?
I have not heard of that.
Like they bake in hot dogs. It's in Canton, Ohio. There's a plant. My mom wanted me to get a real job. So this is after after I quit college, before I found the car dealership job. I worked at this meat packing plant and had to put like these weird clothes on, go down to a basement. It was gross, disgusting. Because my grandpa worked there while he was a farmer back in the old days. So I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do because I'm not going to go to college. Yeah, that was nuts. And that's when I saw the ad for the car dealership on the lunch table. And I said, see ya. That was the only job I ever quit, I think. And like the rest of them I got fired from. Because I'd still be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loyal to a fault.
You're exactly right. And, but again, that led me to, I can't say I started my sales career because I sold other things, but, at that point, my sales career was selling a life and health insurance to self-employed. What I didn't know is that I was selling sick insurance to healthy people. And, I was one of the best at it. I was number 2 in the country. And then went to Blue Cross and Blue Shield Anthem and was one of the top sellers there. And my wife at the time, because I told her, I says, I gotta get out of this. She goes, you're making killer money. I says, I am bored out of my mind. I hated selling insurance. And
what attracted you to that job in the first place? You just needed a job and you'll take anything. And back then, I remember how that game worked. Like it was almost like they're gonna try to get 1,000 people to come, and then one guy is gonna make it, right? That was like their filtration process.
Well, so I wanted to be in sales so bad, and the reason why is because when I was at Learjet, I would work with the sales department because the sales team there, if you were to ride with a customer and do a test ride, engineer had to be on board to answer any technical questions. Well, the other engineers hated the sales team. I loved them. And so when I was with them, I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. So then when I got out of it, and I kept saying I was buying my time to go back into Learjet.
Could you tell those guys were making more money? Did you know they were making more money than the engineers?
Oh, they were making 5 times as much.
That's
they
what
were
I'm saying.
driving
knew
in.
it. It was kind of like obvious too, right? Like everybody knew.
That was the first time I ever saw a Ferrari, and they were lined up. Ferraris.
Yeah, and so you're like, dude, I know more than them, and I can do it better than them. Because the engineer inside of you said, dude, I can do this, right? Like, you're like, I should have a Ferrari, right? Yeah, no, I get it. I'm starting to now understand the Chuck that we all know in the roofing space, coaching salespeople on how to sell and training sales managers on how to manage. Like, this is the engineer. This is the high C, organized, precision, like process mixed with like, hey, I got to turn the influence on only because I need it a little bit, not That's because right. I'm naturally like that, because I know it's a skill set that I got to be trained on.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, no, I see it now. I didn't know that part about you. So like that helps me complete the whole puzzle. Cause I was always wondering like, where does this precision come from? Because like, I know what it takes to be like a master salesperson. And then also the whole other thing is a master manager, like a sales manager and a sales coach. Like it's a whole different, and like that is where like the precision in the organization, because you can get by, salespeople can get by a lot of times on, a lot of them think they can get by on talent and like, they're willing, being, they're marketers really in masks. They're not really salespeople. They're marketers.
And you hit the nail on the head, because this is one of the reasons why I get frustrated with so many of the sales leaders today is most sales leaders shouldn't be sales leaders. They were just really good sales reps where the owner thought that they could clone them.
Because the owners don't know anything about sales
they don't.
Most of the time, or leadership or management, right? Because like most founders, especially roofing companies, are guys that are either good sales guys or good roofers. That just like happened to needed a job because they got fired or because their grandpa and dad was always in it. And like, that's all they ever know, yep. Or it's like, nobody ever just picks roofing, do they? Like, I don't know.
Nobody graduates.
Well, they are now though. You know what's crazy now they are though. There's a lot of smart guys. Wall Street guys are picking roofing now.
Yeah, that's
true. And now guys like me and you are like, yeah, dude, we got lucky. We're in the roofing world now. Like now it's cool to be in the roofing industry now. But like, I know when I first started, dude, I was like, don't tell anybody I'm in the roofing world.
I left the insurance world to go into mortgage. Now that was fun.
I did that at GE Money. And like,
Man,
but I didn't know what I was doing. But I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I was young, and like they just trained me on how to do telephone like sales. It was all over the telephone. Like, tell me what your experience was like with mortgages. Did you do stuff all over the country, like over the phone, or did you just do stuff local?
So I started doing stuff local, and then one thing I'm really good at, and it doesn't sound like it, but I'm really good at networking and just getting to know the right people, because I can scan a room and decide I need to talk to this person, I need to talk to that person. So I got in really well and really good with some of the folks from Wells Fargo. And I asked them, I said, what do you guys do with all your turn downs? And she goes, nothing. I says, do you mind sending them over to me? And within 2 months, I was one of the top closers in the country for mortgage. I mean, I had people that were manning phones because I couldn't do them fast enough. But I had them sending me every one of their turn downs.
Were you so wait, was this before the crash in 2008?
Yep.
Yeah, that's when I was in too. So like GE, I was in GE Money. I got fired from every car sales job, so I'm like, oh, I'll get a stable job at GE, General Electric, doing credit card collections over the phone. And then I saw a job posting for mortgages, and I'm like, yeah, commission, man. Like, I want to get back into it. My mom's like, no, man, like, that's not a good job. Like, that's like, that's too risky. And, and again, I was like, no, Mom, I'm still wearing a headset. I'm still in front of a computer. Like, I'm not leaving the cubicle. And now I look back, we were doing interest only, balloon payments, California stuff, stated income, like all this crazy stuff that I didn't know. I was just a 24, 25-year-old kid. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, that's the reason that's why the whole thing went down. It's because they were just programming people to like sell mortgages to people who couldn't afford mortgages. I didn't know any better. So like now I don't feel as bad, but like I look back and I'm like, wow, the older I get, I'm like, dang, dude, that was weird. But GE was lucky enough, like, because they're smart and they have a reputation. So they got out before the countrywide thing, and they saw the writing on the wall. They shut the whole department down. I literally walked in. They locked us out. They wouldn't even let us in the building. I was like, well, can I get my old job back in the credit card collection department? Nope. 6 months, you can reapply. And then I had to call my mom and say, Mom, you're right. I got fired again. My mom's always been right about taking the safe jobs, but like I can never play it safe. So here I am, still being an entrepreneur now. So, so tell me what your experience was like at the end of the mortgage world, because like it was all bad for everybody, I think, at the end.
Well, luckily I had some really good friends in the industry, and one of them's called me up. He says, "Man, you got to get out. You got to get out right now." And some really cool stuff happened in the middle there, but I got another good friend of mine called and said, hey, there's this company that's it's really small, but I think it's going to grow pretty big. And I said, what is it? And he says, it's called Bath Fitter. I said, what's Bath Fitter? And he says, it's this one-day bath system. So long story short, I became the marketing and sales director for Bath Fitter. And I guess the rest was history. I mean, you can see where Bath Fitter is today.
Yeah.
I mean, they're huge. And from there, I get a phone call, and it was a headhunter. It says, hey, one of the executives for Able Roof saw you speak, and they wanted to bring you in. And in Dayton, Ohio, a roofing company back then was like a husband and a wife in a smoky loft. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with roofing. And finally, he got me talked into driving all the way out to Columbus and sitting with these people. Yeah,
he was the real closer.
He was good. He would leave me alone. 6 months he called me, and I went out there and again, long story short, I was the head of sales for Able and Mr. Roof, and it's more or less I took care of my folks there in Columbus. And then I worked with all the other sales managers, and you can kind of see where they are. They're the nation's largest residential roofer in the United States. And so then left there and decided on my way home, because I live an hour and a half away. And so my hour and a half drive home, I've gotten no less than probably 30, 40 calls. And I'm like, man, this is a small world. All these people found out that I left already. And I told my wife, I says, with all these people calling, I think I'm going to try this coaching thing out. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
So that's really good. I want to unpack that a little bit here in a second. But let's talk about all the way up to the time to when the Mr. Able guy called you, and like, what on the personal side, first of all, like, when did you get divorced? Like, when did like the divorce happen? Because I want to talk about like what was going on in the personal life, any struggles, any type of like setbacks. Because I know, like, in my own life, like, there was always trying to be successful in business and always try to solve a problem and try to like be somebody and try to like, keep climbing, right? But then there was always like, man, I was always burning stuff down. But like, you seem like you come from you seem like a pretty just good guy. Like, I don't know. Did you ever have any like demons? Did you ever have anything like bad? Like, did you ever struggle with anything personally? Like,
not
anything you want to share
really.
anyway.
Well, no, I mean, I had my fair share of hiccups with certain drugs, but I never got hooked on anything. My brother made sure of that because he got into it pretty heavy.
But not because you're an extrovert party, or more because you're like, oh wow, that's kind of fun. Like I can get out of my own little world for a little while, right? Like, like it was.
I will say on certain things you couldn't get me to shut up, which was good, which was different for me.
So then maybe that trains you on how to be a little bit more extrovert when you need to be. Like, you can always find silver linings in all the bad and the good, right? So I like to share those stories because there's people out there that are struggling that always think people are perfect. Because we a lot of people on social media come across, like they don't, they have never had anything bad happen to them, right? And it's like, no, man, like some of the greatest people I know, they've went through some struggles and they've learned from it. And it's like we can take a lot of lessons from that. And so that's kind of why I asked. But what about on the relationship side? Because like, as a that happens, right? Like, obviously you have an ex-wife. I mean, like, dealing with communication, right? It's usually always communication, right? Like, it's
this one. Ours wasn't. We rushed into marriage. We rushed into 2 kids. I love my 2 older kids to death, but we just didn't get along. And when we came back and really struggled, when I had to work 3rd shift in a freezer, she just wasn't having it, and she thought the easy way out was to just divorce me, and which was because I'm so loyal, I would never have divorced her, even though I didn't like her a lot. But
no, I hear you.
But it's funny because as soon as that happened, when you get a negative thing out of your life, your whole life can change so fast. Once you get, whether it's a negative friend, a negative family member, a ex-wife, whatever, and then all of a sudden things just start to happen for you really fast. It's crazy. What I know, you and I were talking before about the law of attraction, and that's right around when I started to learn about it, was when I got into mortgage. A guy gave me the CD, The Secret, and we were on our way to Nashville, and I watched the whole thing on our way to Nashville. And I just had a different view on life at that point, and I just went straight up. No, I couldn't do no wrong. I mean, everything was just
the universe was coming to you. It was wide open, man.
When I really started to believe in it, I even told my wife at the time, or not wife at the time, my current wife, sorry. And I told her, I says, man, this stuff is real. I says, to tell you the truth, I guarantee you when we get home today that there's going to be a check in the mail. And we got home. I had no idea. Now, it was a very small check. It was some sort of weird refund or something.
You got to start the manifestation.
But there was a check in the mail.
Yeah, you got to start them small, and then they get bigger, right? It's got to start with that baby one first, man. Like, you can't. That's like those visionary skills, man. That like you just know that like that stuff's gonna happen. And then like your wife, like she's probably just getting to know this side of Chuck, and she's probably like, dude, what are you talking about? She probably thought you were a little crazy. But then as she starts seeing this stuff happen. Wow, it's real, right? Like, because a lot of people don't realize this, because we were talking a little bit before the show about this, and like, it's a real thing. Like, you can manifest things, and then and when you let the universe come to you, and there's a lot more education around that nowadays. Back before, like, you found it early. Like, I feel you're like a pioneer in that world, because like I just am now realizing this over the last 3, 4, 5 years. This sounds like to me like this happened to you like 10 years ago, like 12 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Like, so And to me, that's kind of cool. I want to learn from you, man. You're like an OG. You're like an OG.
I still teach and train this on some small groups that I train. And I'll explain the law of attraction this way. It's like a horse with blinders, and you can only see you can only manifest what you can see. And so when we first bought our first Volvo, I never saw anybody with anything more than maybe a Woody type Volvo. And so my wife wanted this S60. And so we drove all the way out to Columbus, did not see a Volvo on the road. We picked up this Volvo on our way back. Man, I'm telling you, there must have been 40 people that bought a Volvo the exact same time as us and happened to be driving in circles around us because we saw Volvos everywhere once we got it. It's the same thing. It's the
same thing. I remember I bought a Hellcat like 4 or 5 years ago, and like I was like so proud of myself. I didn't even know what a Hellcat was 6 months before I bought it because like I just like had one of those itches because I thought that a sports car was going to change my life, and I thought like, oh, that's a cool thing to do because I remember back in my old car sales days, everybody had cool sports cars. I'm like, oh, cool, I finally made a little bit of money. I'm going to buy me a sports car, even though like I wasn't a car guy. Like I'm not. I sold it last year, but when I bought it, I never even knew what a Hellcat was. Like I was gonna buy a Mustang or a Camaro, right? Because like like a Ford or Chevy, like I Dodge. Like I didn't even know what Dodges were. Then as soon as I bought that freaking Hellcat, man, I saw Challengers everywhere. Now they weren't all Hellcats, but then I started looking and I saw Hellcats, and I'm like, dang, dude, there's a lot more of these in Pittsburgh than I thought. Like, and then I got like tick sick of it. I was like, I don't even want it anymore. But then that's how I also then learned about marketing and branding because when I started Big Fish, and you know what it's like, these small roofing companies, like when you start to get a name for yourself, like customers, I'll never forget my first truck on the road. I remember I see you everywhere. I'm thinking like, dude, I only got one truck on the road, bro. Like, how do you see me everywhere? And now I get it because there's 25 trucks or however many we got, and so it makes it a little bit more like, but like, yeah, you're right. Like humans, like once they see it, they can't unsee it.
That's right.
That's a cool analogy with like the horse blinders and the car, right? Because I think everybody can relate to the car, because especially when you buy something you've never bought before, like, and you like think it's cool, and then you realize, man, dude, in some crazy marketing ploy, they made 1 million of them.
Yeah. Like we named our middle child Charlotte, and now it seems like she has like 3 friends that are named Charlotte. I'm like,
oh yeah, yeah.
They must have all been watching Sex in the City because that's what.
Yeah, exactly. See, like that's what I'm saying. Exactly. And again, you don't want to call that out and say, oh, that's why. No, it was subliminal. It was subliminal. It's subliminal. It's somewhere because you're right. Kids' names every 10 years, man. There's like a run on like Dakotas, like there's like a run on like these like Gunner, like like all these like Hunter. Like I feel like they didn't make those names like my generation. And like all the 30-year-olds are named Hunter. Yeah, I don't know. Hunter Ballou, if you're watching, we love you, bro. We love you.
We love you, brother. Yes.
What so talk to me about, let's get into sales now a little bit since you got in that road, because like you got into sales because the guy chased you down, basically.
Yeah.
In roofing at least, the bath fitter, that was an opportunity where someone like led you to an opportunity, you figured it out and, made a name for yourself. Then the roofing guy, like, because most roofing guys don't have good sales experience, but we know what we are. Persistent is all get out. Even and persistence can get you, you can think that you're a good salesman with persistence because like it's almost a mask. It's almost dangerous, right? Because like you can like, does that make sense what I'm saying? Most people at home are probably like, what are you talking about? But like, because me and you are like very, very like nerdy with sales. But like a lot of people are just like either overly persistent, which gets them, 25% of the deals. Or some people are just so passive and likable that they get the other 25% of the deals. But the true master closers get 50% of the deals. And they get them both, right? They get the other 50%.
They know what to say no matter what.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about that, because I don't want to get too nerdy on that, because there's a lot of YouTube content out there, and people can go watch all that. But like, tell me, like, for people that are listening and not listen, sales. Just so everyone knows, you guys are all salesmen that are listening right now, every single one of you, because every time that you make a decision, you're either being the one getting sold to, or you're the one doing the sales, right? You're either doing the influencing or someone's influencing you. You can kind of like, choose. And if you're like on the other side where you're always being sold to, wake up, pay attention, and learn how to get what you want in life. Not because you're greedy, but because you don't want to deal with a lot of pain and suffering and conflict all the time, right, Chuck?
That is absolutely right, man. If you're good at sales, life is easy. It really is. If you know how to sell, that's why we love selling so much, is because that's the easy part of what we do every single day, is going out selling, doing what we love every day, and being successful because all we have to do is do it right.
Talk to me about how it helped you, because like you started learning sales like well into your 30s, right? Like it wasn't like you were like did it like when you were 20s. Like it was like you were into your 30s, like kind of like learning this new skill. But talk to me, like, yes, of course it helps you make money at your job, but like tell me how it impacted your relationships, like with your wife, with your kids, learning that skill of being able to help solve their problems, listen with understanding, empathy, and being able to close those gaps. And everybody thinks you're a superhero when you can do that.
And this may sound somewhat superficial, but where it really helped is in the income, really. The money.
Yeah, money makes a lot of problems.
Makes things a lot easier sometimes.
Yeah, and again, your wife at the time, your current wife probably realized that you're getting into this career, and she probably knows, you're coming home. Hey, look, I learned this, I learned that. Don't try that crap on me, So it's probably a little bit hard with the wife because they always know what we're up to. But it does make all your relationships, especially the new relationships that you make, like it almost like seems like, man, like these are like, it's not that they're easy because it takes work and skill. But once you get so good at it, you don't even know you're doing. You don't even know. It's like you're not trying anymore. Like you're just like, it's just natural.
My wife really never cared until recently, because now I'm working with some of the top hostage negotiators in the country. Just learning from some of them, working with them, people like Chris Voss and those guys.
Chris Voss. Yeah.
And learning from somebody like that. And it's really based on the emotional intelligence than anything. People are like, oh my gosh, he teaches you what to say and how to say it. It's like, yeah, but that's not the secret behind the negotiation.
It's not manipulation. It's really understanding who the other person is. First of all, you have to ask them enough questions to be able to get their pulse, their DNA, understand like what kind of like human that they are, so that way you know how to respond and talk to them, because there's like a bunch of different character personalities and profiles. I don't know how you like kind of like try to I don't know if you like put people into 4 categories, 10 categories, 3 categories, 2 categories. It all depends on how complex you want to make your brain. But there's different, the way you talk to an accountant and engineer is a little bit different than the way that you talk to a salesman.
Yeah, so
right?
We all learn from somebody. Mine was Dr. Tony Alessandra on the Platinum Rule. The director, socializer, relator, and thinker. And I've heard some people try to mimic his stuff, and you have the owl and the eagle and all that crap, or the colors. But the Platinum Rule was the initial way of taking disc and making it easy. So if you have the director, these people, they're decisive. They're very direct type people. So are socializers, but socializers, they're very relationship driven. Directors aren't. Then you have your relators. They're the get along to get along. You can almost tell them to go get their checkbook. And I've seen that. I have never done it, but I've seen it on a ride along where I knew that they were a relator. And this guy named Carl, the lady's like, I just don't know what to do. And he's like, what? I know exactly what you need to do. She goes, really? He goes, yeah, just go upstairs, get your checkbook, and write me a check for $5,000. She goes, that's exactly right. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But again, I knew right away that she was a relator, and so did he. We work on it all the time. And then you have your thinkers. These are the people when they say they need to think about it. A lot of times they really do. And so they're your engineers, your accountants, whatever. And we just need to know how to deal with these types of people. But again, it all goes into sales. People think that sales is nothing but scripting. When you first come into sales, yeah, it is scripting, because you got to learn the basics first. Once you get that foundation, And people think that the foundation is understanding sales. No, the foundation are the scripts. The understanding sales, that's more advanced, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like human psychology. So at the end of the day, you know, and I've done a lot of self-development therapy. I worked with therapists, coaches, and stuff like that. Well, like psychologists, like trained therapists, if they're really good at their job, they're the ones that actually, they get paid 50 grand a year, because like we, insurance and all this stuff, right? Like, unfortunately, like they don't make any money, but like they're really good. Mm-hmm. They just don't know, like, because they're doing it as a medical service, like almost like not as a skill to get what they want in life.
Correct.
And so like, but like the good ones are like really good at like hostage negotiators. Like he's not getting paid a commission every time he he's getting the same 150 grand a year, 100, whatever the FBI or the CIA pays him, like whatever, like they're, but they're getting called out. They're doing it more for like, cause like it's fun for like, it's like almost a rush for them probably, like those hostage guys, right? I would assume, right? Like it's more like some guys like to fight fires. Like some people like to deal with hostage situations, right? So they get a thrill out of that, right? They don't care about the money. They care about the thrill. But yeah, it's fascinating because it's really emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, you hit it right on the head. And I firmly believe, and I don't know, I'd love to hear your take on this, is that emotional intelligence for the next, for the last 20 years, it's all been about physical fitness and let's get jacked. And again, that's important too. You got to have a healthy body, but like that healthy body is no good if you're freaking like, you can't deal with conflict, the world's burning down around you. You can't maintain relationships, you're in fight or flight mode all the time. There's good conflict and bad. As soon as I say conflict, most of you guys that are listening, oh, that's bad. No, man, there's good conflict.
There is
like
good
me and
conflict.
Chuck, me and Chuck have differences. Like me, I'll never forget when we were on a panel that one time. Like I'm a 2-call closer. You're a 1-call closer. Guess what?
That was fun. I have to say
listen, we're all getting the same. I just stretch it out because I'm more of a brand and customer service, and I believe in what we're doing so much. I'm okay with that customer waiting, but I also get the thing like, hey, you got to strike while the iron's hot, because you're right. There are some customers, if you can identify that and you're trained well enough, you're right. You should be able to go do that. And I can do that. It's harder for me to train. It's harder for me personally, because again, I'm not skilled at training people like you are. I'm getting a lot better, obviously. Like I don't give myself enough credit sometimes. I'm not good at like the day-to-day coaching. I can get in front of like the workshop and like tell you, but like when you're struggling every day, like on the ride-alongs, it's like, no, dude, count me out, man. Like I am. It's like kind of like watching, like I watch Michael Jordan, right? Like I'm not comparing myself to Michael Jordan, but like when he would like he just give me the ball, I'll dunk it. You know what I mean? Like I kind of had that mentality a little bit because I went from sales guy to CEO real quick. And I didn't have much patience there wasn't much patience in the middle. Now I'm learning a lot of patience, at the CEO level. But yeah, I'm not a sales manager. I'm not a sales coach. I can train, I can do a workshop for a day or two. Mm-hmm. People get a lot of value out of it because I love sales because I've done it for so long and I really like it, but not training it every day, right? Because that's a whole other skill set.
Yeah. I got to share with you. So I was doing an on-site in Indy and, we were going through and the guy says, oh, what if this, what if that? And I says, well, there are jobs that you're not going to close. You're going to have to come back. He says, I knew it. Benny was right. And I says, you were at the One Industry, One Model, weren't you? And he said, yeah.
And it's not even that. See, like, man, I'm building a brand. So like, I care more about that's the entrepreneur in me though. And so like, and I'm gonna read. Hey, I just have a different philosophy. And again, everybody's philosophy is okay. Like I know how to 1-call close. I mean, I can do it. I don't want. You know what I worry about? I worry about one day when I'm an old man, and like there's 3,000 salespeople in my organization, and they all turn into Grant Cardone. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't want and again, I don't think that would be bad leadership on my part. But like, if I ever let that happen, but that fear. And again, I've learned a lot about Grant Cardone, so I don't want anybody to think that I've learned there's good and bad to everything, right? So yeah. Grant, if you just take away all the flash and the jets and what you think the sales is bad, but if you take him his words, like if you read his books, like the books are they're money, like they are money. You might not like his delivery, but if you just read the text and interpret it how you want. and don't listen to him, like his inflection and stuff like that, because that might put you off. But his content is pretty solid. If you can look, same thing with Gary Vee. Like if you can get past like the not liking the way they deliver it, like the content's solid. Like it is solid. It's proven. I mean, like, and yeah, Benny's right. Like you say that, but like you're right. One call close. It doesn't matter as long as you get the job done.
As long as you get the job done, you're right.
I will say that you can compress time a little bit if you can do more one call closes. That's where like the skill is a little bit better, but like you become a little bit more transactional. And I think that you run the risk of always doing what's right for you and not what's right for the customers. So I'll still fight you on that. But again, it's healthy conflict. We were talking about conflict. See, that's the ADHD. I started a rabbit trail. You guys watched it live happen on a podcast. That's why like all the people that like when I try to ask for my team for help, like, how can we make my podcast better? Well, if you could just stay on track, the listener would be able to stay with you. I'm like, but that's not me, man. So they're going to have to like have fun with it, right?
That's exactly right.
Chuck, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we would have?
Not really. In the end, we brought up Top Rep, and Jim Johnson and I really put our heart and soul into Top Rep. We have all been, him and I have been to so many different trainings. And what we did was we figured out the great things about them and the things that weren't really good about them. And we made Top Rep. And that is why in just a few short years, it has become the industry's top training platform. And it was done intentionally, and like I had a big talk with Steve Patrick. I love Steve Patrick. And he says, Chuck, man, and he did it on stage in Dallas, which was, I'm forever grateful for him. He's like, Chuck, you're not just the best trainer in our industry. You're the best trainer in the country, and he also knows that I may not be the best sales person, but there's very few people that understand the training aspect, how I train a salesperson, and how I train a sales manager. And we put it into Top Rep, and it's exploded. These companies like Eldridge and I can name them all day long, but they have exploded. And the reason why is they've taken those aspects of it, United and some of the others, they've taken those aspects of it, put it into their business. And they're like, Chuck, we're never turning back. We're dominating. There's a lot of these platforms where like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, we're raising our close rates. But because of what we teach, how we train it, and how we get through to the owners when we're there, they're dominating their industries, which is really fun to watch.
Well, yeah, because your style too. You don't come across like a Grant Cardone or a Jordan Belfort, or you don't come across that. Like you just have a common sense approach, right? And that's what I like about you. You know what I mean? Like I know we have different philosophies sometimes, but I do love that you're authentic to you and you're real, and that's why I was glad to have you on the podcast today to get people to see more of the real side of you, right? Because there's a lot of people that you watch on YouTube that you just. You don't know. Like, there's so much stuff on YouTube, and I see you doing more content, so I'm proud of you for that. I've watched you kind of like, elevate the personal brand a little bit, and I see you on TikTok, which I do a terrible job of trying to get one.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
It is so hard to get all this content out, man. Like, man, that's like a full-time job. It doesn't really, because I like being with the people, like, doing all that stuff on the social media. Like, I feel like I have to, but like, it's not, I guess it's more one-to-many, which is better than one-on-one, because after being in the box in sales and only dealing with one customer at a time, after you do that for, I've been doing sales, like I said, 12 years old. If you count me selling baseball, candy for baseball, shoot, I'm 41, and now I'm selling people and coming to work for my company. So I'm always selling. It's not as transactional anymore, but like when you do transactional sales for so long, and then you have bigger goals and bigger dreams, it's like sometimes you have to elevate, and you have to understand at a higher level. And that's what you've been able to do. You've been able to, you have more of an awareness of the psychology, the training, like what it's like to be transactional, what it's like to be long lasting, you understand all these different pieces and parts. You understand the different psychologies of humans, how they interact. And that's so important. And in sales, you've been able to basically write your own dream life. and like you do, like you get invited to all the cool places, man. You're in Cabo like all the time. Like,
yeah.
I tell my wife, I said, I'm like, man, listen, I said, and you're a guy, like a real life guy that's doing it. Like, I'm a big Gary Vee fan, Tony Robbins. I see what those guys do, right? But like, like Chuck Thokey, like he's like they're inviting him to Cabo. And like, if he wants to take the family with him, I'm sure he can. If they want to stay at home because they're tired of going to conferences and events in Cabo, like sure. But like, hey, the opportunity's there to go to Cabo to like teach sales. And
yeah.
the podcast is over when my screen goes out because I had the thing on too long today. But hey, no one watches YouTube anyway. Actually, I think everybody watches YouTube now.
at one point,
but I get a lot of stats too that say they listen to the Apple and Spotify. So if you guys are getting value out of this, if you have any sales questions for Chuck, leave them in the comments. I'll make sure that he answers them. And if he doesn't answer them, I'll answer them. And then he'll rebuttal me. And then we'll have healthy conflict. And we'll get into some sales tension, So
I look forward to it.
Listen, it's been great having you on. There's 5 questions I ask every guest though before we wrap the show up. So imagine that you're the last person left on Earth, and you have to go to you're gonna leave Dayton, Ohio. They're gonna go put you on an island somewhere. Like you're just gonna you're gonna be like Wilson, right? And like, is that what it was called? Like the Tom Hanks movie. You're gonna be on an island by yourself. You can take one book with you. What book are you going to take with you?
I think we dropped out. What was the question?
What book are you going to take with you?
What book? So I am a huge Patrick Lencioni fan.
Well, me too.
So
which one, man? I got a bunch of them, man. His are all good.
I mean, I really like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but the one that really hits home for me and the one I train out of a lot is the Ideal Team Player.
Yes.
Humble, Hungry, and Smart, man.
Yeah.
I live that book and I love it. And so I'm right there. A good friend of mine, I think everybody knows him, Nathan Thibodeau. He says it best. He says most books should have been an article. And I believe it too. I mean, people write books so that they can be called an author sometimes. But Patrick, he's Patrick Lencioni. I talk about him like I know the guy, but he is very authentic. He's very good. Any book he writes, I'm on.
So I don't know if you know this, but I'm a big EOS guy, and Gino Wickman and Patrick Lencioni are like boys because Patrick Lencioni is all through Gino Wickman stuff. And that's how I was introduced to because I dropped out of college. I never read books until like 4 years ago, when I needed to start leveling up. And that really, every book that he has, I really like the new one, The Working Genius, and like the whole thing with that. It's kind of like they're building a program off of Working Genius, just like they did off of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team for facilitators and like team building and like really getting to understand your leadership team and solve conflicts and just so everybody, I'm nerding out with you right now. And this isn't a sales pitch for Patrick, but like his books are all like good, like fiction. They're fictional stories, but they obviously can be based on real life stuff. And the way he writes them is just so funny and so, especially if you've led a team and you've been like, or a family. Listen, just like here, you don't have to be a business person to read this. Like read it and pretend like it's your family and there's like 5 or 6 of you and like he just paints the picture so perfectly and then he always wraps it up at the end with some lessons and then like it's just genius and they're short, like they're only like 4-hour reads, and like and again I've read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team probably 7 times.
Yeah.
I just told our boy Reggie Brock about this guy. Now Reggie's excited about him. I mean, like I'm telling you, man, like that guy, he's got a gift. All right, so that was the book. You're allowed to take one movie with you. What movie are you taking with you, Chuck?
Top Gun, man. Both of them.
Both of them. Isn't there like 3 now or something? I don't know. That guy keeps coming out with sequels. Top Gun. All right, that's cool. You're allowed to put. You get one restaurant. You're allowed to put. It could be someone. It could be a famous restaurant. It could be a little hole in the wall somewhere. I know you've been all over the world. What restaurant are you putting on your island?
It'll be a Jeff Ruby. It's right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Jeff Ruby is the best.
What is it? Like a steakhouse?
It's a steakhouse, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been there, so I'll have to check it out. If you ever...
Yeah, it's amazing.
I have to figure out when I'm ever going to want to go to Cincinnati, but we'll see. That's because I'm an Ohio guy, so it's like, I tried to leave Ohio. All right, so I did the book, I did the movie, I did the restaurant. All right, you're allowed to go on one trip anywhere in the world for a week. Where are you going to go?
So I've always wanted to go to Bora Bora. I don't know if it's just because it's like the other side of the world or what, but I've always wanted to go to Bora Bora.
Can I play salesman with you right now on the call?
Sure.
All right. So what's holding you back from going to Bora Bora?
More or less, it's time. The other thing is probably the $15,000
time, like for like the whole week or 10 days or 14 days, or like you don't want to be on a plane for a day to get there. Which part of the time?
I don't like being on a plane for more than maybe 4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I can definitely understand that. When you say like Bora Bora, what about Bora Bora like really gets you excited? Like what part of it gets you excited?
It's just I love to relax. Mm-hmm. Anytime that I go on vacation, it's either an adventure or relaxation, but most of the time it's relaxation. It gives me that opportunity to think about what's going to happen next. I do love to go to Mexico.
Okay.
And so again, it would be one of those things where, beauty and thought provoking more than anything.
So where's your favorite place in Mexico?
So I really like going to Cabo.
Cabo. And what about Cabo do you really love that you think Bora Bora, like the Bora Bora, like kind of like is like what part?
Well,
is it the tiki? Is it the tiki huts on the water? Is it the crystal clear water? Is it the
crystal
people?
Clear water is really, yeah.
And so like, what about Bora Bora? Do you think is so much better than Cabo or yeah? Like what's so much?
I really don't know. I've never been there.
All right, so it's more of like a FOMO thing.
It is a fear.
It's a marketing thing. They've been marketing it well. They've been marketing it well to you because if you really are in the because let me ask you another question, if it's okay. If you don't make it to Bora Bora before you die, are you going to have a regret?
No.
Okay. So it doesn't really seem like I can help you solve this problem today. The gap isn't big enough. Like again, now I'm going to get back out of like the zone mode. So like listeners at home, there's not enough pain. There's not enough motivation. There's not enough pain. Like, and so like he's probably not going to do it. People like I can't sell him a trip to Bora Bora right now because like Cabo. It was Cabo, right? Is that the word you like to go to in Mexico? Yeah. Yep. So like that's not going to be. There's just not enough of a reason yet. Now, if he can be influenced somehow, read a magazine article, if something else attracts him to it, or like maybe Cabo like has a bad experience, all of a sudden like it could shift him. But right now he's not in the right state. He'll never buy Bora Bora right now. Just to let everybody know. But that's how you take somebody through a process, right? Because if they're not qualified, like, because I'm trying to qualify you to see if we can even do business. I'm not even going to give you a price on the Bora Bora trip because, like, it don't matter what it costs. Like, it's not a cost thing right now because, like, it's not tied to money. I'm starting to nerd out a little bit. Sorry about that. All right, last question. Mm-hmm. You can spend 24 hours with any human, past, or present, somebody famous, somebody that you know. Like, who are you spending 24 hours with?
Say it one more time. You went out on me again.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the web, but like this is all recording, so it'll be good.
Okay.
So you can spend 24 hours with one human, right? You're on your own little island. You're by yourself, man. You could like, someone in history, somebody you look up to. It could be like your next door neighbor. I don't care who it is. Like you tell me who you're going to spend 24 hours with and pick their brain and just spend time with them.
Somebody I've always wanted to meet. I've listened to his stuff, Les Brown. If I could just spend 24 hours with the guy, that would be awesome. It was E.T., but I've spent a lot of time with E.T. actually. But Les Brown is just, I think that he's somebody I'd love to kind of get to know a lot more.
All right. Well, all right. I won't go through the same exercise that I just did for Bora Bora, but we could probably make that work because you just gotta, you know how to do it. You just manifest it, man. Like
you have to manifest it. Yeah, I know his daughter.
You have to. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. You just have to. You just have to figure out how to get in the same room, man. And next thing you know, you guys will be BFFs.
I was gonna say his daughter lives in and very popular in Columbus, so I got a chance to meet her. She's like, yeah, I'll introduce you to him, and never really got a chance to.
You don't want it bad enough.
You're probably right. When it comes right down to it, man, I have done some cool stuff in my life, man, and I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever.
I know, but I want to try to find that one thing that Chuck really wants, and I want to see Chuck get it. Like I want to, like that's the podcast that we need to do, because like I'm gonna go deeper with you next time if I ever get you back on.
I'll tell you, outside of my family, if there's one thing that I really want is I want to see Top Rep manifest into the top training platform in the world, and it will be at some point.
Like all industries.
I'm looking at all sales industries.
Wow. So you are committed. So like you're young, you're hungry, and you just put that vision out there. Now it's on. Now I don't know if you've ever said that anywhere, but
this is it. That's the first time.
No, that's the first. That was the first step. You know, now you just got to say it again and again, and then like get some people behind you, and then they just start coming, man.
That's right.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. How somebody follow you, get a hold of you on social media, reach out to you? What's the best way to contact Chuck?
The easiest way to contact me is either through LinkedIn or Facebook Messenger. But look me up on Facebook, just Chuck Thokey, the fan page. That's the easiest way, as well as just going through Top Rep, which is topreptraining.com.
Cool. Well, listen, it's been awesome having you on, and I look forward to seeing you at some more events in the industry, and I appreciate the friendship over the years, and we'll see you guys on another episode of the Big Fish Cares podcast. Every Friday, we drop a new one. See you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.